All right, notes 3.5 are on applications of linear equations. And what we need to do is whenever we solve word problems, if we follow the following steps, it'll make things so much easier for us. So the first thing I want you to do is to underline or highlight out all the given information, okay? Then I want you to determine what you want to find out. Step 3, draw a picture if you need to. And step 4, write let statements. But you have to ask yourself, how many things do I not know? Sometimes you can combine these two together. Not necessarily all the time, but sometimes you can. Number 3 is not necessary, but step number 4 is. By asking yourself, how many things do I not know? It helps you determine how many let statements you have to write, okay? And if you don't know what a let statement is, you will very shortly know, okay? Then once you figure that out, once you figure out what your let statements are, you're going to write your equation. And writing your equation is super easy once you have your let statements, okay? Then you're going to solve your equation and then you're going to check it. And when you do that, you have to ask yourself, does your answer make sense? So for example, in question number 1, it says that Cassidy has a brother who is 3 years younger than she is. The sum of their ages is 23. How old are Cassidy and her brother? So the first thing you're going to do is underline key information. All right. So I am going to underline the fact that Cassidy has a brother who is 3 years younger than she is. That's key information right there. Okay. And the sum of their ages is 23. How old are Cassidy and her brother? So in order to figure this out, we need to go to step 2, which is what do we even want to know? We want to know how old Cassidy is, and we want to know how old her brother is. Step 3 is to draw a picture. Drawing a picture isn't really going to help us out in this problem, so we'll go to step 4, which is to write let statements. And you're going to ask yourself, how many things do I not know? Well, I don't know the age of Cassidy, and I don't know the age of her brother, so I'm going to write 2 let statements because there are 2 things I don't know, okay? Now it says that Cassidy has a brother who's 3 years younger than she is, which means we need to know Cassidy's age before we can figure out her brother's age. So that means that Cassidy will be our first let statement, okay? So we're going to say let Cassidy's age equal some variable because we don't know how old Cassidy is. So you can call it whatever you want. I'll call it X, okay? Then, now that I've written that, I can write a let statement for Cassidy's brother, right? So let the brother's age equal, well, if he's 3 years younger than she is, then you have to take her age and subtract 3. So I asked myself, how many things do I not know? I didn't know 2 things, so I wrote 2 let statements. Now that I've written my 2 let statements, I can write my equation. Writing the equation is super easy because I have my let statements. It says the sum of their ages, so that means I'm going to add their 2 ages together, is 23. So I'm going to take Cassidy's age, and then I'm going to take the brother's age, and I'm going to add them together. So here's Cassidy's age, here's the brother's age, okay? And it's going to equal 23 because it says is, which means equals 23. All right? So then, once I've done that, all I have to do, the next step is to just solve my equation. So to solve, I'm going to combine like terms. Okay. Then I'm going to add 3 to both sides to get the x, to help me get the x by itself. Divide both sides by 2, right? I end up getting x equals 13. So that means that Cassidy is 13 and her brother is 13 minus 3. So I'm going to fill this into my let statement. Cassidy is 13 and her brother is 13 minus 3, so he's 10. So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write just a little summarizing statement to say that what the final answer is. We're going to say Cassidy is 13 years old and her brother is 10 years old. Okay, we're going to skip question number 2 and we are going to go on to number 3. We're going to do number 2 next time I see you guys in class. So in number 3, it says the greater of 2 numbers. So I'm going to underline key information as I read it. So the greater of 2 numbers is 1 less than 3 times the smaller. If 3 times the greater, so I'm going to take the greater number and multiply it by 3, is 5 more than 8 times the smaller, find the numbers. So this one is pretty tricky, so please pay attention to this as we go through this. So I've underlined key information, and I've identified what I want to figure out. I want to figure out what the numbers are. Drawing a picture won't really help me in this situation. So step 4 is to write my let statements, but I have to ask myself, how many things do I not know in this problem? Well, I don't know the smaller number and I don't know the larger number. Now it says the greater of two numbers is 1 less than 3 times the smaller. So if I don't know the smaller, I don't know the larger, but this larger number, the greater number, is based on the smaller number, which means that my first let statement that I'm going to write is on the smaller number. So I'm going to say let the smaller number equal x. All right, so then the greater number is 1 less than 3 times the smaller. So I'm going to write a let statement that says let the greater number equal, well, if it's 1 less than 3 times the smaller, I'm going to take the smaller, which we called x, okay, and I'm going to multiply that by 3 because it's 3 times the smaller, and it's 1 less than that, so I'm going to subtract 1, okay? So I've written my let statements. Now I need to write my equation, and my equation is based on the rest of the information that I haven't used yet. So it says if 3 times the greater number, so I'm going to take my greater number, I'm going to color code this so you can kind of see it a little bit better. So the smaller number, I'm going to color code it orange, and then the larger number, I'm going to color code it green so you can see what I'm talking about, okay? So 3 times the greater number, so I'm going to take the greater number, which is 3x minus 1, but it says that it needs to be multiplied by 3. So I'm going to put it in parentheses because the entire number is being multiplied by 3. So if 3 times the greater number is, so that means I have to say equals, 5 more than 8 times the smaller, so that means I'm going to have to add 5 eventually, okay? And it's 5 more than 8 times the smaller, so the smaller is x, so I'm going to say 5 more than 8x, or 8x plus 5, find the numbers. Now I can just go through and solve my equation without any problems. So this becomes 9x minus 3 equals 8x plus 5. I can subtract x from both sides, or excuse me, I can subtract this 8x from both sides, right? So I end up getting 9x minus 8x is 1x, minus 3 equals 5. Then I can add the 3 to both sides, so I end up getting x equals 8. So now I know that the smaller number is going to be 8, and that the larger number is going to be 3 times 8 minus 1. So I end up getting 24 minus 1, which is 23. All right, so that means that my two numbers are going to be 8 and 23. Those are my two answers. But I want to really make sure that it makes sense, or that it checks. I'm not going to check it in the equation that I wrote because I could have written the equation incorrectly. I'm going to check it in what the word problem says. So it says 3 times the greater number. So I'm going to take the greater number, which is 23, and I'm going to multiply that by 3, so I end up getting 69, okay? Is 5 more than 8 times the smaller? Well, 8 times the smaller is 8 times 8, which is 64. And then add 64 to 5, because it's 5 more, you end up getting 69, so it's the same answer, okay? All right, so now we're going to take a look at number 4. Number 4 is really tricky, so please make sure you guys are paying attention. When two opposite sides of a square are increased by 3 centimeters, okay, and the other two opposite sides are decreased by 1, a rectangle with a perimeter of 40 results. Find the length of the side of the original square. So I don't know how big the original square is, and I don't know how big the original side of the original square is. So if I don't know that, I'm going to call it x. So I'm going to say let x equal the side of the original square. Now, if you notice in step 3, it says to draw a picture. Drawing a picture actually would be very helpful for this because it's a geometry problem. Now, you know all the sides in a square are equal. So if one side is x, all the sides are x. Now, it says that one set of opposite sides of the square is increased by 3 for each side. So this becomes a rectangle, okay? So one set of sides is increased by 3, so that means that I'm going to add 3 to both sides, okay? And then the other two opposite sides are decreased by 1, so I'm going to say x minus 1, x minus 1, and then I get a new rectangle where the perimeter is 40. Well, you guys know that to find perimeter, you just have to add up all the sides, so that's what I'm going to do. I've got x plus x plus x plus x, so that means I have 4x, okay? And then I'm going to add 3 to 3 to negative 1 to negative 1. 3 plus 3 is 6, minus 1 is 5, minus 1 is 4, so I end up getting 4x plus 4 equals 40. Subtract the 4 from both sides, I get 4x equals 36, which means that x equals 9. So the original side of the square was 9. So my answer to the question is 9 centimeters. But again, I want to make sure my answer seems correct. So the new side of a square is going to be 3 more than 9, which is 12. So these two sides right here would be 12. And then the opposite sides are 1 less than the original side. So that means that this would be 8 and this would be 8. So 12 plus 8 is 20. Another 12 plus 8 is 20. Add them all together, you get 40. So the perimeter is 40, and it works. Okay, we are going to be talking about consecutive integers. And with consecutive integers, the key piece is knowing how to write your let statements. The let statements for consecutive integers are almost always identical, which makes it super easy for us to be able to solve it. So consecutive just basically means one after the next after the next. So for example, in this problem right here, we've got 3 consecutive integers, 5, 6, and 7. So if I were to express them in variables, let's say that 5 was my a, that would mean that 6 would be a plus 1 because I'm adding 1 to 5 in order to get 6. And then I would add 2 to 5 to get 7. So this would be a plus 2. And you would continue to add 1 on every time, okay? Now, if you have consecutive even integers, let's say 4 was b, to get to the next number, which is 6, I would add 2, right? Because every time I want to get to the next even number, I have to add 2. But if I add an extra 2 onto the original 2, it would be 4. So it would be b plus 4. If I were to keep going with it, it would be b plus 6, b plus 8, so on and so forth. Now this is the one that people tend to get confused about because it says odd. So if I call c 5, how do I get to the next odd integer? Well, a lot of people will think you should add 1 since 1 is an odd number. But if I add 1 to 5, I end up getting 6, which is not an odd number. In order to get to the next odd number, I have to skip the even number in between, which means every time I have an odd integer, I'm always going to add 2 on, or 4 or 6, depending on how many there are. Again, because you need to skip the number between one odd integer to the next odd integer, okay? So the next question, number 5, says to find 2 consecutive integers whose sum is 45. Well, they're just regular consecutive integers. They're not even or odd. So my let statements are just going to have a variable and then that variable plus 1, plus 2, plus 3, so on and so forth. In this problem, I only need to find 2. So again, just like we always do, underline key information. I want to find 2 consecutive integers. The sum is 45. So there are 2 numbers I don't know. So I'm going to say let the first number equal x. And that means that the second number, since they're consecutive integers, they come one after the next. So I'm going to say the next number is going to equal x plus 1. And then the sum of the integers is 45. So I'm just going to take each integer. Here's my first integer. Here's my second integer. I'm just going to add them together, and it's going to equal 45. All right? Now solve it like you would solve any equation. Combine your like terms. You get 2x plus 1 equals 45. Get rid of the 1 by subtracting it, so you get 2x equals 44. Divide both sides by 2, you end up getting x equals 22. So that means that your first integer is 22, and your second integer is 23. So your answers are 22 and 23, which should make sense to you since the sum of 22 and 23 is 45. Okay? All right, last question, number 6. Find 3 consecutive even integers. So we want 3 of them. They have to be even, such that the sum of the smallest and 3 times the second exceeds twice the third by 38. And now we want to find the integers. Do not get scared by all this language. All you have to do is take this little by little, piece by piece. Once you do that, it's super easy. So let's follow our steps for solving word problems. Number 1, underline key information, check. Number 2, identify what we want to figure out. We want to figure out what the integers are. Step 3, draw a picture. That's not going to be helpful this time, so we're going to skip that step. Step 4, write your let statements. So in this problem, there are 3 things that I don't know, the 3 consecutive even integers. So I'm going to write 3 let statements. Let the first even integer equal x. Okay, now I have to write one for the second one. Well, the second one is 2 larger than the original one because they are even integers. So I'm going to call this x plus 2. Okay, and then let the third even integer, I'm just putting hashtags just so I don't have to write it over again. That's totally fine if you do that as well, equal x plus 4. So now I'm going to write my equation. 3 consecutive even integers are such that the sum, which means to add, of the smallest, so I'm going to start by taking the smallest number, and I'm going to add 3 times the second, so I'm going to take the second number, and I'm going to multiply it by 3, but if it's 3 times the second, it's the entire expression. I must have parentheses around the x plus 2, okay? So again, I'm taking it little by little. The sum, I've got that in my equation, and I'm adding the smallest, which is x, and 3 times the second, so here's 3 times the second, exceeds. To exceed a number means to be more than a number by a certain amount. So it exceeds it means that the sum of the smallest and 3 times the second is equal to 38 more than twice the third. Okay? So hopefully that rewording makes a little bit more sense to you. 38 more than twice the third. So the sum of the smallest and 3 times the second is, which means I have to say equals, 38 more than, so I'm going to add 38 to something, twice the third. So I'm going to take 2 and multiply it by all of the third integer. Okay, now that I've done that, the rest is easy. I can just set up my equations and solve. Distribute the 3 through, distribute the 2 through, so you end up getting x plus 3x plus 6 equals 2x plus 8 plus 38. Okay, combine your like terms on each side that is possible. So the x and the 3x go together to give you 4x. And the 8 and the 38 go together to give you 46. Okay, subtract the 2x from both sides. So I'm going to get rid of this 2x here, subtract the 2x here. I end up getting 2x plus 6 equals 46. I can subtract 6 from both sides, and I end up getting 2x equals 40, which means that x equals 20. Now, if you get a decimal, it means something went wrong, because remember, decimals can't be integers. If you get an odd number, then something went wrong as well, because all the numbers are supposed to be even. So that means if x is 20, my first integer right here is 20. The second integer is 22. And the third integer is 24. So my 3 answers are 20, 22, and 24.